What makes Hollywood turn its back on one of its own? Sometimes it's not a scandal or a flop. It's the attitude behind the camera, the outburst between takes, or the ego that swallows the whole set. Because in this business, charm is currency, and once it's gone, so is the work. From icons who burned bridges to stars who couldn't play nice, let's uncover the faces that Hollywood quietly decided it had enough of. Number 20. Kevin Spacey. Few careers have collapsed as fast or as completely as Kevin Spacey's. Once hailed as one of the most talented actors of his generation, he built a reputation for being intense, secretive, and controlling. On set, directors called him brilliant, but exhausting. He preferred multiple takes, private rehearsals, and often rewrote dialogue without warning. Co-stars admired his skill, yet dreaded his mood swings. Then came the breaking point. As the industry shifted toward accountability, past grievances surfaced, and Spacey's powerful image shattered almost overnight. Productions were halted, contracts vanished, and scenes were reshot to erase him entirely. The real shock wasn't just his fall, it was how quickly Hollywood moved on. After decades of commanding attention, the industry that once celebrated him barely whispered his name. Today, Spacey's comeback attempts rarely reach mainstream audiences. His story stands as a reminder. No matter how brilliant your craft, Hollywood has no patience for arrogance once the curtain drops. Number 19. Katherine Heigl. There was a time when Katherine Heigl was everywhere, gracing romantic comedies, magazine covers, and red carpets. But behind the smile was a reputation that studios quietly dreaded. It started when she criticized her breakout show, Grey's Anatomy, calling the writing unworthy of awards. Then she publicly called her hit movie Knocked Up a little unfair. Those comments spread faster than her co-stars could blink. Writers labeled her ungrateful, directors called her difficult, and producers started crossing her name off casting lists. Insiders claimed she constantly questioned scripts and demanded endless rewrites. Some admired her honesty, but in a town built on diplomacy, bluntness is often mistaken for ego. By the early 2010s, the offers dried up. Heigl moved to smaller streaming projects and independent films, trying to rebuild her image. Ironically, she later admitted she had been misunderstood, saying she was just speaking her truth. But in Hollywood, where public image is everything, timing matters more than truth. Once that door closes, it rarely swings open again. Number 18. Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson was once untouchable, a leading man with charm, box office power, and directing awards to match. But fame magnified his flaws. Reports of explosive tempers, erratic behavior, and verbal tirades turned him from superstar to outcast. Studios grew hesitant to work with him, fearing he'd overshadow the story with controversy. When The Passion of the Christ hit theaters in the early 2000s, it divided critics and audiences alike. Soon after, Gibson's personal conduct and public incidents pushed him to Hollywood's fringes. For nearly a decade, he was unofficially exiled, his name whispered in meetings, but rarely signed on contracts. Then came a slow, cautious comeback. Films like Hacksaw Ridge reminded audiences why he was once a force of nature behind the camera. Yet, even with critical praise, the shadow of his past behavior still lingers. Gibson's tale isn't just about downfall. It's about the long, uneasy road of redemption in an industry that forgives late, but never forgets. Number 17. Lindsay Lohan. Once considered Hollywood's golden girl, Lindsay Lohan had everything: talent, timing, and teenage charisma that made her a household name. But fame came fast, and control slipped away just as quickly. On sets, she was known for missing call times, clashing with directors, and creating chaos during filming. What began as youthful rebellion soon became a professional red flag. Directors whispered about unfinished takes and costly reshoots. Insurance companies hesitated to back her films. Co-stars quietly admitted they never knew which version of Lindsay would show up: focused, professional, or unpredictable starlet. When her career finally stalled, studios didn't need to announce her downfall. They simply stopped calling. Years later, she relocated overseas, rebuilt her piece, and found stability outside the spotlight. She's made attempts to return to acting, appearing more grounded than ever. But Hollywood's memory is long. Once the it girl of the early 2000s, Lohan became the cautionary tale of what happens when talent meets turbulence without restraint. Number 16. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf was supposed to be the next big thing, a child actor who grew into a blockbuster star. But his method acting, while intense, became notorious for crossing lines. On the set of Fury in 2014, co-stars reportedly complained about his behavior. He stopped bathing to stay authentic, picked fights for realism, and even isolated himself from the crew. Director David Ayer described it as commitment beyond reason. It didn't stop there. From art installations to bizarre red carpet stunts, LaBeouf seemed determined to challenge Hollywood's patience. Some admired his creativity, others saw chaos disguised as art. Studios grew hesitant to insure his projects, worried that he'd turn the set into performance art. But beneath the controversy lies undeniable talent. Films like Honey Boy and Pieces of a Woman reminded audiences of his brilliance when focused. The tragedy is that his genius often came packaged with unpredictability. In Hollywood, you can be daring or difficult, but not both for too long. Number 15. Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow's career has been a paradox. Oscar winner, lifestyle guru, and one of the most polarizing figures in Hollywood. She began as the golden child of the 1990s, earning praise for her elegance and grace. But somewhere between her polished interviews and her luxury lifestyle empire, the industry's warmth turned chilly. On movie sets, co-stars described her as detached, rarely socializing with the crew. Directors quietly noted that she treated certain productions like side projects instead of passion pieces. Off-set, her public image filled with expensive wellness ideas and out-of-touch advice made her the poster child for Hollywood privilege. Yet the backlash wasn't entirely personal. It was cultural. As fans struggled during recessions and layoffs, her image of effortless perfection felt tone-deaf. Even some former co-workers joked that she lived on another planet. Still, Paltrow rarely engaged with the criticism. She leaned into her brand and built an empire outside film. Today, Hollywood respects her influence, but keeps its distance. She's proof that in show business, success can make you rich, but relatability keeps you loved. Number 14. Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis spent decades as one of the biggest names in cinema, redefining the action hero with charm and grit. But behind the cool persona, stories of tension began to emerge. Directors described him as distant and uninterested, showing up for the paycheck rather than the performance. Some collaborators said he refused to rehearse or take direction, creating friction on otherwise smooth productions. Kevin Smith, who directed him in Cop Out during the late 2000s, famously called the experience soul-crushing. Others quietly agreed, saying Willis's indifference drained energy from the set. His legendary status protected him for years, but by the 2010s, his reputation had faded from leading man to difficult veteran. Later, health challenges revealed a more complex picture, earning him sympathy from fans and colleagues alike. But within the industry, the stories remain, of a man whose brilliance often came wrapped in impatience. Bruce Willis remains an icon, but his Hollywood relationships were built on respect and eroded by exhaustion. Number 13. Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer wasn't just a movie star, he was a phenomenon. From Top Gun to The Doors, he brought intensity that few could match. But that same passion made him infamous on set. Directors called him argumentative, unpredictable, and almost impossible to manage. During the filming of The Island of Dr. Moreau in the mid-1990s, chaos reached its peak. He reportedly refused to work full days, fought with crew members, and mocked co-stars. Director Richard Stanley was replaced mid-shoot, and replacement director John Frankenheimer allegedly vowed never to work with Kilmer again. Co-stars later described the set as a war zone. Kilmer defended himself, saying he was misunderstood and deeply committed to the art. In truth, both may be right. His later documentary Val revealed a reflective man who knew his intensity had cost him friendships and roles. Today, Hollywood remembers him as both brilliant and bruising a talent that burned too hot to handle for long. Number 12. Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway is old Hollywood royalty, the kind of actress whose performances could electrify a screen. But off camera, her reputation became legend for all the wrong reasons. On the set of Chinatown in 1974, she clashed endlessly with director Roman Polanski, reportedly walking off set and arguing over details as small as lighting and hair. Jack Nicholson once joked that she was terrifying, while crew members said she could turn a quiet day into a crisis. Her perfectionism bordered on obsession. Every gesture, every pause, had to be just right. That precision made her an icon, but also a nightmare for anyone sharing her workspace. In later years, Dunaway acknowledged her temper, but never apologized for her intensity. "I demand excellence," she once said. And maybe that's true, but in Hollywood, demanding excellence can look a lot like defiance. She remains one of the greatest actresses of her time, but also one whose fire left more than a few scorched egos behind. Number 11. Sean Penn. Sean Penn has two reputations, one as a masterful actor, and another as Hollywood's most combative personality. On screen, he's magnetic. Off screen, he's a storm. Known for his short temper and fierce opinions, Penn's clashes with directors, journalists, and even fans are the stuff of industry folklore. During the filming of The Thin Red Line in the late 1990s, crew members reportedly walked on eggshells around him. He demanded script changes, argued about blocking, and questioned creative decisions constantly. Directors described working with him as both thrilling and exhausting. Every scene was an argument, every moment a test. Despite the tension, his performances have earned him 2 Academy Awards and global respect. Yet Hollywood has always kept him at arm's length. He's the actor everyone admires, but few want to endure. Sean Penn's legacy is proof that brilliance can command awards, but not necessarily affection. Number 10. Edward Norton. Edward Norton might be one of Hollywood's sharpest minds, and that's exactly the problem. From American History X to Fight Club, his performances are unforgettable. But behind the camera, Norton earned a reputation as the actor who couldn't stop directing everyone else. On the set of American History X in the late 1990s, he reportedly took over the editing room, recutting scenes without the director's consent. The film turned out brilliant, but the studio wasn't thrilled about the power struggle. Directors described him as meticulous, demanding, and unwilling to compromise. On The Incredible Hulk in 2008, Norton clashed with Marvel executives over tone and pacing, pushing for a darker, more psychological version. When the film premiered, he was quietly replaced in the sequel. It wasn't about talent, it was about control. Co-stars often praised his intelligence, but hinted that working with him could feel like taking an exam. Norton defended his intensity, saying he just wanted the best result. Yet in a system built on teamwork, constant creative tug-of-wars can wear thin. Today, he's admired as one of the best actors of his generation, but he works far less frequently. In Hollywood, you can be a perfectionist or a collaborator. Norton chose the first. Number 9. Teri Hatcher. On television, Teri Hatcher played the lovable, clumsy heroine of Desperate Housewives. Off-screen, though, the housewives weren't so desperate to be her friends. Reports from the mid-2000s painted a picture of tension so thick it could have been another storyline. Castmates allegedly refused to include her in group gifts and photo shoots. Rumors spread that she isolated herself, spoke sharply to crew members, and often demanded special treatment. Showrunner Mark Cherry diplomatically called her a consummate professional, but insiders said she was difficult to please. Eva Longoria once hinted that certain cast relationships were not friendships, which fans took as confirmation of the whispers. The irony is that Hatcher's work was never questioned. She earned awards and critical praise. But in Hollywood, likability often matters as much as talent. After the series ended, major offers dwindled. While her co-stars jumped into new projects, Hatcher quietly stepped away from the spotlight, focusing on family and smaller ventures. Whether unfairly labeled or genuinely difficult, she became another example of how quickly a TV darling can lose favor in an industry that thrives on chemistry, both on and off camera. Number 8. Steven Seagal. In the world of action cinema, Few names inspire as many eye rolls behind the scenes as Steven Seagal. His rise in the late 1980s was explosive martial arts mastery, slick ponytail, and a stoic screen presence that audiences loved. But on set, that calm exterior reportedly hid a short fuse. Co-stars described him as domineering, dismissive, and convinced of his own legend. By the time he filmed Out for Justice in 1991, tensions with crew members were legendary. Fellow actors claimed Seagal rewrote fight scenes to make himself look unbeatable, and even cut others' lines to keep the focus on himself. Actress Juliana Margulies once said she refused to be alone in a room with him, calling him scary. The fallout? Hollywood quietly moved on. As the action genre evolved into ensemble storytelling, Seagal's one-man show approach felt outdated. He shifted to low-budget overseas films, where creative control was all his, but the respect he once commanded was long gone. In Hollywood, confidence is magnetic, arrogance fatal. Seagal crossed that line and never came back. Number 7. Amber Heard. Amber Heard's story is one of the most polarizing in recent memory. Once a rising star known for The Rum Diary and Aquaman, she became better known for her legal battles and public feuds than her films. What began as a private relationship dispute turned into a global media circus that split audiences in half. But inside the industry, the verdict was quieter and just as harsh. Studios saw her as a risk. Productions delayed or rewrote projects to avoid online backlash. Fellow actors avoided choosing sides, not out of loyalty, but self-preservation. It wasn't just about controversy. It was exhaustion. Hollywood hates distractions, and Heard became one. Despite strong performances earlier in her career, the constant headlines made her a symbol of division. In the years since, she stepped away from big-budget productions and turned toward independent work overseas. Whether she earns redemption or remains an industry outsider will depend not on juries, but on time. In Hollywood, image isn't everything. It's the only thing. Number 6. Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen was once television's highest-paid actor, pulling in millions per episode for 2.5 Men. But behind the sitcom, laughter was chaos waiting to explode. On-set outbursts, erratic interviews, and public feuds with creator Chuck Lorre turned his meteoric success into a spectacular collapse. Crew members recalled unpredictable shooting days, sometimes smooth, sometimes impossible. Warner Brothers eventually suspended production, citing behavioral issues. When Sheen fired back through the media, calling himself winning, the internet turned it into a meme, and Hollywood turned its back. Even after apologizing and landing another series, the damage was done. Networks were wary of trusting him with expensive projects again. Directors admired his talent, but feared the unpredictability that came with it. Still, there's no denying Sheen's impact. He dominated pop culture for years and helped define an era of television excess. But in a town built on reliability, fame can't outshine fallout forever. Hollywood gave him everything, and then decided it had seen enough of the show. Number 5. Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase was once comedy royalty. From Saturday Night Live to National Lampoon's Vacation, he defined an era of humor built on smirks, sarcasm, and slapstick. But behind that charm was a reputation that even the funniest punchline couldn't fix. Colleagues described him as rude, unpredictable, and sometimes cruel, especially to younger cast members. On SNL, his ego clashed with everyone from Bill Murray to writers who once idolized him. Decades later, the pattern repeated on Community, where he played the grumpy Pierce Hawthorne. What should have been a career revival turned into a storm of tension. Creator Dan Harmon publicly admitted their working relationship collapsed, and castmates confirmed that Chase's behavior made the set uncomfortable. He reportedly walked off scenes mid-take, argued about scripts, and once used language that shocked even veteran comedians. By the show's 4th season, he was gone. Chevy's story is a strange one, adored by audiences, alienated from peers. He's made attempts to soften his image in interviews, but the damage lingers. The irony: he was a comedy pioneer who forgot the one rule that keeps any set alive: being the joke is fine, but being the problem is not. Number 4. Megan Fox. Megan Fox became an overnight sensation with Transformers in 2007. But her quick rise came with an even quicker fall. In interviews, she compared director Michael Bay's work style to being overly controlling remarks that set off a chain reaction. Within days, she was dropped from the franchise, replaced without ceremony, and quietly labeled difficult. Behind the scenes, producers said her comments were disrespectful. Crew members publicly criticized her, and major studios stopped calling. For a time, Fox disappeared from blockbusters entirely, her name tied more to controversy than career. The truth, however, is more complex. Fox later said she was young, outspoken, and frustrated by how women were treated in action films. Many in the industry have since acknowledged she was punished more harshly than her male peers. Still, the damage was done. While she made a small comeback in independent projects and streaming hits, the glow of her early fame never fully returned. Megan Fox's fall wasn't about talent. It was about timing in a world that rarely forgives women for speaking too soon. Number 3. James Franco. James Franco was once Hollywood's ultimate multitasker actor, director, artist, and academic. But behind the charm and ambition, co-stars began whispering about behavior that blurred the line between creativity and control. He developed a reputation for pushing boundaries and testing patience, both on and off the set. When former collaborators began distancing themselves, the industry quietly followed suit. His once crowded schedule emptied almost overnight. Streaming platforms paused projects, and even his longtime friend Seth Rogen publicly stated they wouldn't work together again. To his credit, Franco eventually stepped back from the spotlight, focusing on education and smaller ventures. Yet, the shift was clear. Hollywood had turned its back. In an industry that thrives on reinvention, he remains frozen in time. Too famous to forget, too risky to cast. Franco's story shows how quickly admiration can turn to avoidance. One day, you're Hollywood's golden boy. The next, you're the cautionary tale everyone uses in private meetings. Number 2. Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin has long been one of Hollywood's most magnetic performers and one of its most volatile. His talent made him an icon. His temper made him a headline. From public outbursts to on-set clashes, Baldwin's anger became its own character. Directors described him as brilliant one moment, impossible the next. On 30 Rock, his comedic timing earned him awards and praise, but even co-stars admitted his intensity could change the atmosphere in seconds. His reputation for shouting matches, impatience, and public confrontations grew larger than his resume. When tragic events later shadowed his career, the industry's tolerance thinned even further. Despite everything, Baldwin continues to find work, often delivering powerful performances that remind audiences of his range. But Hollywood's affection for him remains cautious admiration with a side of distance. Baldwin's story is the ultimate paradox, proof that charisma can open every door and temper can close them just as fast. Number 1. Catherine Zeta-Jones. Few stars have walked the line between glamour and grievance like Catherine Zeta-Jones. At her peak, she was unstoppable, an Oscar winner with commanding screen presence. But insiders claim that her ambition sometimes turned collaboration into competition. Co-stars quietly described her as protective of her image, sensitive about screen time, and prone to tension when the spotlight shifted elsewhere. During ensemble projects in the 2000s, reports surfaced of her questioning creative decisions and clashing with directors over camera angles. To the public, she remained polished. Behind the scenes, she was known as fiercely controlling. Her representatives denied these claims, calling her focused and professional. But the reputation stuck. Still, Zeta-Jones never truly vanished. She transitioned into selective roles, often portraying regal, composed women, a reflection of her real-life persona. Hollywood may have cooled toward her intensity, but her presence remains undeniable. She's proof that being hated and being done are two very different things. In the end, her elegance outlasted her enemies. So, what really gets you hated in Hollywood? It's rarely one mistake, it's a pattern, a spark that turns to wildfire when ego meets exhaustion. These stars had talent in abundance, but fame demands more than skill. It demands grace under pressure. Some earned forgiveness, others faded away, and a few still fight for redemption. But one truth never changes. Hollywood loves a comeback almost as much as it loves a downfall.